Hello and welcome to another episode of Darks in Dublin. And we lay our scene once more in Trinity College, home to the Hermetic Chantry, where two mages are having a coincidental meeting because we all know there is such a thing as coincidence in the world of darkness. Um,
So she is the woman uh, who is currently going through the tour of the college. She's fairly pretty young woman, looks about 20, with the bright purple hair she's got in the overlay. Um, she's wearing a number of little pieces of feather on a necklace and little other pieces like little gemstones and everything. Generally looks pretty eccentric, the way she dresses, and she's kind of at the back of the crowd when Rupert walks by. You know, kind of she's being polite, listening. It doesn't seem like she's paying a ton of attention, if that makes sense.
okay. Well, Rupert is probably say leaving an earlier meeting to a certain building and making his way out when he probably notices, say, at least say quite distinctive aura. Um, and probably happens to make his way over. Can I help you, miss? You look a little lost.
She looks up in surprise and says, "Oh, I'm just here. I heard this was a really good college, and I wanted to check it out.
Ah,
My name's Mary." And she holds her hand out for a handshake.
hello, Mary. Accepts the hand. My name's Rupert. Yes, it's very good college. For many different areas of study. What's your which topic are you looking at?
Well, I was hoping to study history, if possible. I've got a bit of training in botany, so it's maybe going into depending on what the courses. I don't really know the courses they've offered yet. I haven't looked. I'll be honest, but maybe something to do with that.
Oh, I see. So you're looking for how would one put this? Education for sleepers. I hear many students around here afford a sleeping classes.
She kind of quirks her head to the side and says, "I suppose I'm
I thought
not the type."
no, I thought one such as yourself might be looking for say a more awakened learning environment.
She kind of quirks an eyebrow and says, "I mean, I was unaware of the opportunity, but I mean, it's never something to turn your nose up at if to get a bit more enlightened education."
I think there's a coffee shop over there on the campus. Would you like to get a coffee? Or we can wait till your tour's finished and we can talk about what is actually going on here.
Sure, I'm fine with going to get a coffee. This lecture is kind of boring anyway, so.
Okay, so say relocate to hopefully a relatively quiet corner of the coffee bar.
Hopefully.
So I think where to start. So were you hoping to meet with fellow awakened people?
I'll be honest, I didn't know there were any there.
No,
I've kind of been out of things for a bit, if you know what I mean.
There are quite a lot of us in this city. Oh, many different traditions and crafts and such like. Um, are you part of the traditions?
Yes, I'm told that I was trained as a verbena, I believe the phrase was used.
Ah, well, there are a couple of Verbena in the city I can think of. There's Carly Organson, I think, runs a bookshop. You come
Okay.
across her?
No, I don't think I have.
I thought she was. Yes. So, I can't say I'm particularly acquainted with her. Um, so, I am known as Rupert Gallo. I am a magus of the order, and we have our places of learning hereabouts.
Interesting. I did not know that. Do you like it? The university?
Oh, yes, it's a wonderful atmosphere being among all these old buildings, and the libraries, the facilities are very useful.
Oh, I bet.
So what? So are you looking to get more involved with the awakening community? Are you continue the solitary lifestyle?
Well, I was told that it would be best if I got a bit more involved. I've kind of been a loner, and I was told that it's probably a good idea to get involved. So
Mm.
I've been kind of just wandering around. I don't really know where to meet anyone, so I've just been kind of wandering around, going places. I can find that
Mm.
someone.
If you'd asked me
knows.
last month, I would have told you that the most common hangout seems to be a nightclub, I suppose you could call it, but it's called the Agabar Nights. It's run by the Tafani.
Tani? What are those?
They're a craft, traditional Arabic, I think, but they keep that quite low key. They run the place; it's open to all. I did hear maybe a week or two ago the location was compromised by the union, so it's not currently safe at this moment.
Okay.
There was also a small bar run for our circle by a fellow called Niels of the Chakravarti. He'll give you the address. It was closed, but I think it's reopened. So again, that might be a place for you to meet people.
Okay. What kind of bar is nightclub? Sorry. What kind of place is it?
It's a very traditional Irish pub. It's very narrow, but goes back a long way.
Okay. Interesting.
I can't say it's the most busiest place in town, but it is a place to go to meet people. And to say, he does run it, so I'm sure he will be accommodating. I suppose you could try Carly's bookshop. Um, hmm.
And she's kind of just politely like waiting
Hmm.
for him to continue.
That's reflected. Sure. Is there? Do you have other questions that I might be able to help with?
I'm just I'm just kind of curious. What's been going on in the city lately?
Well, as I said, there was Agabad Nights was compromised by the union, so that was most events. I'm not sure where to start on that front. Um, I'm not entirely sure of your shall we say, your starting point of reference. um, aside from the incident at the Agrabah Knights, actually, the Union have not been causing particular problems of late. Actually, they've been quite quiet on that front. I think they've been working on their own projects and leaving this be. There have been some unfortunate instances of infernalism, but I believe those matters are now largely resolved. Sad business, really.
Yeah, that doesn't sound good.
It was certainly was not good and got completely out of hand. But as I say, it's finally been dealt with. Well, at least the main culprits. Then there was the instance. Because yeah, I suppose if you've been out of the loop, you might not have heard. Okay, are you familiar with the Knights Templar?
Like the historical group? Yeah.
Connected to them, but they also exist as a craft.
Like one of those conspiracy theories that said like the Knights Templar were like Satan worshippers and stuff like that, except real.
That they were awakened. They were, I believe that they were the Templars who refused to abandon Jerusalem. And they continue to exist as a disparate craft. In any case, what happened a few months ago? They rejoined the chorus.
I know who those are.
Yes. However, they then began a purge of anyone in the chorus who does not accept the God, as in, or more precisely, does not accept the Trinity. So, pagans, Jews, Muslims.
That's not good.
No.
At all.
They then, after doing that, announced the chorus were leaving the traditions.
Sure, that went over well.
A few days later, the tradition decided, no, you don't speak for the chorus. Nonetheless, they left and to call themselves the Canticles of Lamination.
Interesting name.
And they continue to hold, as aforementioned, Jews and pagans from the traditions. The traditions gave them 3 days, then declared war on them. And so, as you can imagine, that's rather been the pressing matter that we've been dealing with recently. They were occupying St. Patrick's Cathedral. That's the biggest cathedral in Dublin. They later abandoned it for a fortress in the Umbra.
What's the Umbra?
The spirit world?
Interesting.
As I said, it's been dealt with now, but I think people are still recovering from all the excitement, shall we say? But I don't know what's going to happen with the chorus. They've lost a huge number.
I don't know. I don't have really a lot of experience in this area, so I'm just kind of here for the ride.
So you seem to have come in at a time when one story has ended and the others are yet to open.
Would make sense.
So.
She just goes, so sorry.
You go on.
Oh, I was just curious, what's the Order of Hermes do? Because I read about them in a little bit, but I didn't really learn much about them, if that makes sense.
What do we? What do you do? Yeah, indeed, always the question. Um, what does the Order of Heavies do? Well, I don't know. Suppose let me turn it back to you. What do you do?
I write tabloid articles about like the crazy things that I've heard or read about. That's what
Uh,
I usually do.
right, but what do you as a tradition do?
Like the verbena.
Yes.
Um, from what I understand, most of us are like, druids and stuff, and we keep it natural, if that makes sense. Keep it on the down low. Not all complicated and modern like some people like to do.
Hmm. And okay, I'm trying to think how best to present it in those terms. The Order is, I don't know, a fellowship of most of the European traditional magicians, wizards. Um, we have a tradition back to, well, I can reel off names, some of which are known to even sleep, and some which are not. The traditional arts of language and numbers and signs and symbols of invocations to the archangels, the magic of Doctor D, well, I won't go into Merlin. That's a complicated topic, but when Europeans think of a wizard, they think of us.
Interesting. That's definitely interesting. I never really, imagined that, the whole big pointy hat stick type wizards were actually real.
The pointy hat's less so. A wand or a stave is certainly a useful tool. It can be used to direct, to point, to express will and intent. It can be used as a scepter, as a symbol of authority and dominion. It can be used as a walking stick to aid, to stand, and to bar. It can even be used as a weapon.
Hmm. Interesting. So you would say that your items of power have a lot of uses. They're very versatile.
It's not true of all of them.
Really? Could you give me an example? I'm curious.
Well, language. Language. How many uses does language have?
Well, I mean, really, doesn't it have every use,
Well,
kind of by definition?
there you go then.
Like, if we don't have language, we don't really have much of anything.
And how many uses do numbers have?
Oh gosh, don't ask me that. I hated math in
You
school.
get the point.
And she says, "Yeah, I suppose I do."
Our order is a little different than the other traditions, I suppose. We were formed some centuries before the Council of Nine. We are therefore we are all made up of houses. Each house is its own tradition, formed
Interesting.
together into an order.
So you're like a hippie commune, but for wizards.
I'm not sure I would use the term hippie commune.
Yeah. I don't know. I just kind of like the ring of that, I'll be honest. And she kind of chuckles.
Well, are you? I mean, it sounds like you've had very limited interaction with your tradition. You say how you were told it was a Vena, but what terms like Umbra have not been explained to you. Have you? This sounds like did you awaken on your own, and then you were given very limited instruction.
Well, I actually awakened at my dad's house. Turns out my dad is a mage, and um, him and we've trained, but I just really haven't had the desire to contact others of the tradition before. I haven't felt like, I'm experienced enough to go out there and, just not, well, I shouldn't say experienced, but skilled enough to go out there and, survive, because I've heard all these stories, and then I had this bad experience with this other witch, and it's just drama. It's never fun.
Hmm. So, I mean, you say you've been told you're forbidden, but it sounds to me like you're what some would call an orphan. Someone who's, say, awake on their own. You've not had the benefit of a proper, rigorous training. Actually, no ill reflection on you. It's fact, if anything, it's more impressive that you've got where you are without that support.
I suppose it's nothing really crazy. I just really didn't have from what I understand, the typical training that someone in the verbena gets. Like, I still learned about them and everything. Dad has quite a nice library that he let me use, but never really like trained with a bunch of other verbena or anything like that.
It's thoughtful. Well, many of us are not typical for our supposed tradition. At the end of the day, the traditions are at some level social groups.
Yeah, that makes sense from what I've been told too. And she's kind of like looking around, takes a sip of her coffee. She says, "So, this, do you guys like have like actual classes for awakened folks, or is that just like where you guys hide out and you don't actually teach magic there?"
Yes, I mean it's not so practical these days to have a single master teaching a single student at a time. Much as that has merits, not very practical. So yes, some tuition is delivered in classes.
Interesting. And what is that like? Having, I suppose you could say, institutionalized, teaching.
What is it like? Oh, you presumably have experience of education. You have experience of school.
Well, yeah, that was like normal people's school, not like cool magic school.
Well, I mean, obviously it is a little different because we are generally teaching, shall we say, young adults. We for the most part we don't teach children anymore. No, that does happen, unfortunately, especially with people that awaken too early. But well, there is a great many things to learn, topics which exercise, expand the mind. We encourage people to be the best they can in what they can do, and some people only get so far and will spend their lives at that level, and that's respectful in its own way. Some people will be guided through the process of awakening because they're able to.
Interesting.
I did not have the same violent awakening that you might have done or that some people did. Well, for us, it's more of a process.
Mm-hmm.
But have you done any higher education?
No, I just went to high school. I'm from, and she does have a noticeable like in character U.S. accent.
Fine, okay.
Like it would be specifically, I don't know if you know, it sounds like out of character, but New Orleans accent. But I just don't know the accent well enough to do it in character, or myself, if you know what I mean. She's a New Orleans accent.
Mm. Mm.
So you guys do like magical training. Is it like, do you have to pay tuition for that? Like, I don't know. That seems kind of weird. Like, oh yeah, I pay tuition, kind of like Hogwarts. She kind of chuckles.
Um, no, I do not think the order. Well, not in the way you're imagining. It's not like the order needs the money. Um, we teach the next generation because we want to, because we want to pass our legacy on. In the same way that many people want to have children.
So it's like having kids for you guys. Interesting.
I mean, there may co- there may come a time, and can you not imagine when you are older and wiser and more knowledgeable and more powerful that you would want to pass what you've learned on to someone else.
Hmm.
And perhaps, I mean, if you think about the very best of your school teachers, do not the ones that really cared about your education, do you not think that you, in some sense, you carry something of their legacy in you?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, never really thought about it before, but I guess I can see where you're coming from with that.
I suppose. And as for is the payment, I mean, yes, there is payment of a kind that we grow in knowledge and power, and that sounds and in the future we'll pay that on forwards, or we'll do other good work for the order or for the traditions. If I was to train an apprentice, then they would be available to help me in my own work. Much as if a professor in that building over there was to take on a PhD student.
Interesting. I was just kind of thinking. So it's kind of like an internship almost. Like you're teaching them, and they help you with work and everything, and that sort of thing.
Um, no, I think at the moment. I suppose that would be one way to see it. An apprenticeship in the traditional sense might be another.
Hmm. That is just definitely interesting.
Well, I don't mind talking about this, but I mean, it, am I, is this an indication of your what you are seeking? It sounds to me to say that you're someone who is searching for tuition.
I don't know if I'm necessarily looking for like tuition. I just think it's interesting to learn about like how other people have learned and how other people, kind of got their start, if that makes sense. You know, I find that really interesting.
Mm.
And I suppose it kind of, I have this kind of, I suppose it's kind of a bit old fashioned, this kind of thought that, maybe fate is real. I've worked, magic before that affects things. It kind of makes me think like maybe destiny is a thing, and you know, you can kind of divine maybe where someone's going from their past, and it's always good to know someone's past, anyways.
Possibly, but I would insist on the mortals have absolute free will. You might be able to make very good predictions, but ultimately we have free will.
That makes sense. It's very difficult to live life if you don't, even if it's untrue, without at least having that belief. It makes it very difficult to live life.
So you said you're a writer,
Mm-hmm.
or are you do you have any other involvements in the city? Do you act? Are you involved in other sub communities, perhaps, or what else do you do?
I've worked with a couple of like LGBT rights groups. Worked in a lot of civil rights movements, and I suppose I shouldn't say movements, but like kind of those communities. Um, just general little community help stuff. That's usually what I'm doing around town, around the city. It's always a lot easier to help with you know projects if you got good if a lucky person.
It's nodding. Hmm. Gosh, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that's of note, lovely, which I need to mention or warn you about. As I said, things have been changed recently. Obviously, Agrabah Knights was compromised. I assume St. Patrick's is now safe once more. Now that matter's resolved.
Like, do you know what happened with the church that was making it?
It was occupied by the Templars.
Oh,
Main base.
sorry, I misunderstood. I
Uh,
misunderstood what place you were referring to.
it was quite obviously serious. There was to give you an indication of the magnitude afoot. Um, an archmage, a Cassic, went to negotiate peace with them, and they killed him.
Well, that doesn't seem. I was gonna say that doesn't seem right. I was gonna say, what I've heard of the Knights Templar, that actually seems entirely like something they would do. They were like religious zealots, weren't they?
Mm. Yes, the matter's all sorted now. But as I said, that I hope that gives you a hint of just how powerful things were on both sides.
Hmm.
Um, let's see. Mm. Um, so, what is it you're hoping to find getting out among the awakened community?
I don't know for certain, but I think just learning about other ways of doing magic, other people who work magic would be a very educational experience. And I think it would be definitely a good thing for me to learn.
Okay, so it's knowledge of other ways of working.
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty accurate.
How do you do what you do? How do you see your arts?
Well, how much do you know of Old Norse traditions?
I suppose I'm pretty well informed for an outsider. But do go on.
There's a specific tradition among the Old Norse, I would say, peoples called Seether. It's traditionally seen as women's magic, and it deals with fate and the Norns and affecting that, along with a few more.
is different to the magic of the runes.
Yes, rune magic was created by Odin. He was renowned for having learned Seether because Seether was seen as an unmanly thing. It was seen as I'm just kind of thinking for a second. It's unhonorable, I suppose would be a good way. It was dishonorable. And I learned those traditions, and with my father, I've been kind of working on not quite modernizing them, but adapting them to the modern era while still keeping the traditions, I suppose. So I suppose adapting would be the right word. But yeah, so it's all about, dealing with fate and, affecting that. And I've also learned a little bit of the healer's art. It was kind of a side thing, but something that I was also taught.
We have our own house who specialises in fate. Actually,
Really?
House Fortuna.
It's interesting.
As I said, we're not really one tradition. We're a whole collective of traditions.
So, are there any of these Fortuna in the city?
I think at the moment, not that I'm immediately aware of, but I'd say there are similar chances. I don't know everyone.
Okay.
I'm just luckily thinking for a moment about yes, no, they draw more on the Kabbalistic traditions and the secrets of numbers, so I assume would be very different to how you work. I guess you don't think of fate in terms of numbers.
Kabbalist? What is that? I've never heard of this.
The Jewish mystical tradition.
Interesting. I didn't know that was a thing.
Oh yes, many of arts trace back to that. Yeah, the wisdom of Solomon. Based on interpretations of the Torah.
That's definitely very interesting. You didn't really see that portrayed, I suppose, in like media or anything like that.
There is folklore about them. I think it was Prague where they famously built a golem, a man of clay, back in the 15th century.
Mm-hmm.
So, but because I suppose it's always a small craft because there's obviously Jews don't preach, but then some of their wisdom got out and it became studied and Christianized and adapted into the other Western occult traditions.
Interesting.
But House Fortuna would work with fate, but they would do it through numbers. How would you work with fate? How would you bless all the good luck?
And she kind of looks around and says, I probably won't be able to. She kind of riffles around her pockets for a bit. This might work. And she pulls out just a strand of rope or like twine or something.
Mm.
So this is, rope, right?
Yep.
Well, I use I use this as a symbolic connection, a symbol of like your, let's say it's your life thread.
Mm.
And she starts twining, like knotting the rope very gently, the piece of twine. And by it works better if I actually have prepared, obviously. This is kind of just impromptu.
I'm not asking for a demonstration.
Oh, of course. I'm simply kind of explaining the concept. But and she pulls the knot tight.
Mm.
By manipulating the knot and the rope and weaving, I can sort of weave how fate will affect someone. It's obviously not easy, but it's I've done it a few times. It also helps if I go into a Seether trance
Mm.
to um, help with that. There are certain herbs and plants that also have mystical properties that are very good for um, that sort of just kind of thing in that sort of resonance. They're good for helping with that sort of work. And, yeah.
I see. And does your I've not really come across someone from your tradition in lowercase t before. Do you do you have particular scriptures or codes or prohibitions that you know are there rules against cursing people?
Not that I know of, but abusing the Norn's power is never wise, no matter who you are.
Is there Are there good relations between your tradition and say a Norse runecaster? What would they call Vitgear, I think they're called.
That would depend heavily upon the person. For some people, yes, it would be, a big deal, especially if they're more traditional. But generally, it's the modern day. There isn't going to be a lot of conflict over it. At least that's the hope.
It's perhaps regrettable that our house was largely confined to Europe. It never spread really to Scandinavia in history. Perhaps if we had, there would be a house of runecasters. Or perhaps we would have a very different house Fortuna that created much earlier. Are you spoke of the Norns? I don't know. Do you consider them a symbol, or do you consider them spirits or gods?
I mean, when I awoke, I entered a Seether trance, and in that trance was when I beheld, the Norns and first, learned the sort of power they give. I don't know what they are. I'll be honest, but I think that God categorizes them rather well. It's usually what people call things when they don't know what else to call them, isn't it?
Looks like he's weighing that up, and please had to respond. Some people, I suppose. Um, Certainly, there are powerful spirits, which some people call gods. Some of which may even claim the title of gods. But aside from the Norns, are you? I mean, are you particularly religious? Do you worship these Norns, or do you worship the pantheon of the Norse?
I am a follower of Asatru, yes.
Ah,
I hold the Vanir, Freya, and Frey as my patrons.
no.
And then she smiles. Is there anything else you were curious about?
Well, I mean, I think that gives you a better grasp of your own, say, little small T tradition and where you're coming from. And as I say, hopefully I've been able to at least signpost you in the right direction.
And she nods. Do you? I don't know. It's definitely very interesting meeting others, though. Other awakened people.
It is. It's good to be able to sit down and talk about these things because not everyone is articulate enough to explain what they do or is in the of the right frame of mind and to have intelligent discourse. Some people have short tempers and are easily offended.
Are you? Seems like you've got issues with someone.
Oh, just just not personal issues, past experience at the last big meeting of the tradition heads of the city.
Did things go badly?
They worked out in the end, I suppose.
Interesting.
As I may have mentioned, I work as a lawyer. I'd gone there from work, so I was wearing my legal attire, and we were discussing an infernalist who'd been arrested and what should happen. And when someone openly called for a show trial, you
What's a show trial?
you don't do you understand the term?
I don't think I've come across it before. No.
Oh, as in a trial for show, as in a trial where the result is already decided.
That doesn't seem like a good idea.
No. I mean, the person was clearly guilty, but that's not the point. um, and they wondered why I had to openly condemn them for blatant miscarriage of justice. And some people took offence at the condemnation, and that the Order of Hermes would stand up for due legal process.
And then it seems like
Well, sorry, I hope that answers your question. Though I didn't really mean to bring up, as I say, a matter which doesn't really concern you, and is now hope resolved finally.
it's good that it's resolved. It's never good to let things like those fester.
Well, resolved in the sense the infernalist was executed.
And she nods.
Sadly, that meant that all the people who'd been harbouring her weren't dealt with. I really would have preferred a proper, fair, open trial if only to get to the bottom of everything that happened. But still, infrastructure the future.
So, Why did she say why she did it? Was there a reason, or did she do it just because?
I don't know. You could. I suppose if you want to be generous, you could say it was a stupid choice of words. Um, if you want to be if you want to be more suspicious, you think that clearly there was prior collusion. That how many other people that she'd spoken to were also who were supported her were ready to had had it as a pre-agreed plan. But clearly, there are some people who, for all their enlightenment and awakening and enlightened will, don't have the same concepts of morality and justice that some of us do.
It seems like those with great power do not always think it gives them great responsibility.
Mm, no, if anything, it gives them the reverse. It gives them immunity to consequences.
Hmm.
Sadly, or at least they think it does. But still, didn't need to start brooding on old matters. But so you did ask the question, and hopefully I've answered it.
Yes, you did. It was quite a satisfactory answer.
Um,
So, is there anything else?
I'm trying to
I
think
don't
what
know.
to suggest that would be of use to you. So, are you still planning to enroll here as a mundane student?
Hmm, maybe. I think I should talk to at least some of the other Verbena first. Maybe they've got something similar, set up.
Well, I for my part, I do recommend having an active engagement in mundane life. I think it's healthy to stay grounded in the world.
Oh,
But
of course.
it sounds like you are ready. As you say, you have a job and you have your other commitments. Um, I would generally, I would always encourage people to seriously consider higher education. It expands the mind, and there's much benefit to it, almost just irrespective of what you choose to study.
Yes, that's true.
As for yes, there are a few other Urbane in the city. I've mentioned one already. Um, I do not know if they have the so the same sort of chantry that we do. We obviously, as you know, we are more established and organised tradition, and if more numerous, if only because we're actively training classes of students.
Hmm. Interesting. I suppose that's a pretty useful thing to have around sometimes.
Well, I suppose I should. I suppose I should be on my way. I do have work to get back to. Check the watch. And hopefully this has been useful, and maybe I'll see you around again sometime.
Yes, that would be good. I had a lot of fun and I learned a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, pleasure player. Watchers for watching. This has been another episode of Darkness in Dublin.